Welcome to RJ Academy. Today, we are breaking down the Indian economy and the shifts across its major sectors between 1950 and 1990. Following independence in 1947, India faced a critical dilemma. The nation could leave production entirely to private businesses or hand total control to the government. Because the private sector lacked the resources to rebuild a damaged economy alone, India chose a middle path, a mixed economy where both sectors operate in tandem. To manage this complex new economic engine, the government established the Planning Commission in 1950, led by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. The commission built 5-year plans on 4 pillars: growth, modernization, self-reliance, and equity. Crucially, equity isn't flat equality. Giving identical money to everyone causes hyperinflation. Instead, equity means targeted upliftment, giving vulnerable populations the exact support they need to participate. These 4 goals served as the non-negotiable DNA for every economic decision the Indian government would make for the next 40 years. The first 5-year plan immediately targeted agriculture because 75% of the population was trapped in a cycle of low productivity, rain-dependent farming. The government's first move was a total overhaul of land ownership. They abolished the exploitative zamindar middlemen and instituted land ceilings to prevent a handful of owners from hoarding the nation's primary resource. By the 1960s, the Green Revolution introduced high-yielding variety seeds. This technological shift led to a sudden spike in the production of staples like wheat and rice. As shown in this chart, the shift required expensive new inputs, leading to a foundational debate over subsidies. Supporters argued that since farming is inherently risky, poor farmers needed state financial help to adopt these new technologies. On the other side of the chart, critics argued that subsidies were becoming a significant drain on government finances. They pointed out that much of the benefit was being captured by fertilizer monopolies and already prosperous farmers, rather than the target group. Time for an active recall moment. Considering that India's private sector was largely impoverished in 1950, who do you think took the lead in industrializing the country? The government or private businessmen? Write down your answer and one reason why. While these agricultural interventions eventually achieved self-sufficiency and saved the nation from starvation, the high level of state financial support set a clear precedent for how the government would approach the industrial sector. If you noted that the public sector took the lead, you're correct. The government spearheaded industrialization because private businessmen lacked the vast capital required to build heavy industry, like steel and power. This pyramid illustrates the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956. The top tier, Schedule A, established a state monopoly over 17 specific industries, ranging from oil to aircraft. Indian Railways remains a primary example of this state-led approach, a nationwide operation owned and managed by the government. Schedule B allowed for a mix of state and private ownership, while Schedule C was left to private firms. However, even these private firms were kept under a strict licensing system. No new factory could be opened or expanded without a written permit from the state. The government used this licensing power to influence geography. Permits were granted more easily to businessmen who agreed to build their factories in economically backward rural areas, using industry to drive regional equity. The 1955 Carve Committee further emphasized small-scale industries. Because these businesses use high volumes of manual labor rather than expensive machines, the government protected them with lower taxes and reserved certain products for them to ensure widespread employment. By 1990, India's industrial sector had been carefully engineered to prioritize social welfare and rural development over unchecked private profit. To protect these local industries, India adopted an inward-looking trade strategy known as import substitution. The goal was to produce everything the nation needed domestically to save foreign exchange reserves. This diagram illustrates the first tool of protection, tariffs. By placing a heavy tax on foreign goods at the border, the government made imported items much more expensive than those made inside India. The second tool, as seen here, is a quota. Unlike a tax, a quota sets a hard numerical limit on exactly how many foreign items can enter the country, regardless of their price. While these barriers successfully shielded young Indian companies from being overwhelmed by global giants, they also meant domestic firms faced very little pressure to improve their technology or product standards. Looking back at the era between 1950 and 1990, the successes are clear. GDP contribution from industry doubled, and the Green Revolution ended the threat of famine. However, the same state-led monopolies that built the foundation began to struggle with inefficiency. By 1990, the restrictive licensing system that was meant to ensure equity had often become a hurdle for new private innovation. This matrix serves as your ultimate cheat sheet for the period. It summarizes the 4 core goals: the dual-track strategy for agriculture, the tier-based industrial policy, and the mechanics of trade protection. You may want to screenshot this for your revision. From 1950 to 1990, India functioned like a highly controlled incubator. This was a necessary phase to heal a post-colonial nation, but it was a system the country would eventually need to outgrow to thrive in the global market after 1991. Notes of this chapter is in the description.